Hey guys, in today's book review I'm going to be reviewing two graphic novels, the first being Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven, and the second being the first two volumes of the Hawkeye series by Matt Fraction. So let's start off with Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven and Other Tales, and this is illustrated by Pete Katz. And this collection consists of The Raven, The Fall of the House of Usher, The Mask of the Red Death, The Black Cat, and The System of Dr. Tar and Professor Feather. And of course, anyone who knows me knows that I am a huge Edgar Allan Poe fan. I love his poetry and his short stories. They are just so great and atmospheric, and I love the darkness and the mood and tone to his stories. It's just right up my alley. Poe is right up my alley in terms of the sorts of things I like to read. So I saw this collection of short stories done in a graphic novel format, and I was like, hell yeah, I gotta pick this up. That looks pretty awesome. The artwork done by Pete Katz is very subtle, but it's also very effective, and I think what's important about Pete Katz's artwork is that he really captures the mood and tone and atmosphere of Edgar Allan Poe. He really catches that moody darkness, I suppose, kind of that quirkiness. So with the subtle artwork, Pete Katz, he doesn't really rely on a lot of heavy coloring. The coloring he mostly uses a lot of black and white and gray, and I mean there is some color in here, but like I said, it's very subtle. Sometimes you don't really notice like the color. Whenever there is color, he makes it very vibrant and very noticeable on purpose, especially if he uses the colors red or yellow or green. He uses those colors with a certain purpose in relation to whatever's going on in the story. So yeah, I mean, I really don't have much to say about this graphic novel collection. I mean, if you're a Poe fan, pick it up. I think you'll enjoy it, especially if you already love these particular 5 stories. But I also think this is a nice way to introduce younger readers, or maybe more specifically teenagers. You know, your teenager, they're in high school, maybe they're forced to read Poe and they don't like Poe and they don't get it. Maybe a graphic novel is a nice way to get a teen reader into Poe, give them something more of a visual look at his stories rather than just straight reading his stories, I suppose. And really, my only negative with this graphic novel, the thing about Poe is very symbolic. You know, he is very dark. And the one thing I don't think Pete Katz quite got into this graphic novel, or what he wasn't really able to translate quite well, he wasn't really able to translate those subtle nuances of Poe's at times. Because for instance, something like The Fall of the House of Usher, for instance, that is a very symbolic short story. There's a lot of heavy symbolism going on in that story that sometimes you can't even pick up on the first read-through. It takes multiple read-throughs. I mean, that's kind of how it is with a lot of Poe's short stories, really. You have to read his stories numerous times in order to pick up on all those little nuances and symbolism and whatnot. So yeah, I mean, something like the Fall of the House of Usher, I don't think Pete Katz was able to translate that quite well in a graphic novel format. Like, he oversimplified the story, I think. I think that's the problem. It was overly simplified, and a lot of those nuances of The Fall of the House of Usher weren't totally brought into the story, I guess. And I mean, that's kind of the unfortunate thing about this graphic novel in general. You know, a lot of the stories are shortened and condensed, and they are simplified, which is a shame, but also totally understandable because it is a graphic novel. So I can kind of understand both ways, I suppose. If I had to pick one of my favorite stories done in this graphic novel collection, though, I think I'd have to go with The Black Cat. Oh my god, I mean, even the short story story without the use of visual pictures and whatnot. The Black Cat is a very dark story about this poor little kitty cat. It's horribly abused, and it's about this man who goes a little psychotic, and he does some pretty terrible things throughout the story, and then especially by the end of the story. But oh man, the Black Cat, one of the most graphic one of the most graphic stories done in this graphic novel. I mean, that's the great thing about what Pete Katz does, though, with this collection. He doesn't hold back on the gore. The gore is definitely there in your face, and it's pretty great. So yeah, overall, I really enjoyed this collection put in this graphic novel format. Really fun, a nice different way to re-experience the stories that I'm already familiar with. And I'm actually kind of hoping maybe they come out with another volume and put some other stories in here. I think that would be pretty cool. I would certainly read it. So yeah, moving on to my review of the first 2 volumes in the Hawkeye series by Matt Fraction, illustrated by various different people. Oh man, I have definitely been highly looking forward to these first 2 volumes. I definitely can't wait to pick up the next volumes in the series. I'm not quite sure how many volumes there are in total. I want to say there's maybe 4 or 5. But I really enjoyed these first 2, just pleasantly surprised, really fun and funny. And yeah, just a very quick synopsis of this series. I mean, it's called Hawkeye. From, like, you know, the Avengers, you know, Marvel Comics and whatnot. So yeah, with volume 1, this is collecting issues 1 through 5, and then this second volume, Little Hits, is collecting issues 6 through 11. And basically what you have to know about these first 2 volumes, just kind of the overall thing going on, just Clint Barton, aka Hawkeye, just his very, very normal life and existence when he's not teamed up with the Avengers. Clint is just a normal, everyday guy. He doesn't have special gifts or powers, and he's constantly always referencing that fact in these 2 volumes, you know, the fact that he is so normal. He's not running around with a cape and a magical hammer, you know, and sometimes that kind of makes him feel a little unworthy, you know, like, oh, everyone else loves all the other Avengers, but here I am and no one ever really pays attention to me. And these first 2 volumes not only explore Clint as an Avenger and, you know, the way his normal life is, but these first 2 issues also explore the fact that he has been trained his whole life to essentially be a killer, to be a weapon, and to use anything around him as a weapon. Not only his classic use of a crossbow and whatnot, but, you know, just using everyday objects to his advantage. And the other character that is in these first 2 volumes is Kate Bishop, and she is also known as Hawkeye. And the only little bit of backstory that you really kind of have to know before you do get into this first volume is that Kate Bishop, she was given the name of Hawkeye when it seemed like Clint Barton was dead, and when they thought he was dead, Captain America passed over the title of Hawkeye over to Kate Bishop. And that's basically it. You don't really need to know any other backstory. It's very difficult sometimes to get into these Marvel comics because there's so much history. You know, there's decades upon decades of history and characters and relationships, and it can all get so overwhelming. And that's why a lot of people, a lot of modern readers, have such a hard time picking up a comic because they don't really know where to start. But I definitely recommend starting with this Hawkeye series in particular. It's very easy to get into. You don't have to have any sort of knowledge of the previous decade's worth of Hawkeye stories to enjoy this. I think they're enjoyable as is and very easy to understand. And I also gotta praise the humor in these 2 volumes, you guys. The humor is just crazy. Clint Barton, my god, his mouth, the words that come out of his mouth, he doesn't really sit and check what he's saying. He just kind of says what he says, and it's always hilarious and witty, and there's always some sort of crazy awkward pun going on. And something else I enjoyed in these 2 volumes, I freaking love the relationship between Clint and Kate Bishop. There's nothing romantic going on between these 2 characters, which is kind of surprising because I was expecting there to be some sort of romance between them. I think there's maybe a hint that they might develop a sort of romance. I'm not quite sure. Maybe I was reading into it too much. But Clint and Kate, they're just friends. They banter with one another. They argue with one another. They pretty much understand each other, whereas other people don't really understand them. They're always there for each other. They see each other as equals, and it's such a great, refreshing relationship between the 2 Hawkeyes that I particularly enjoyed. So yeah, overall, this first volume was pretty much flawless, absolute perfection. But I did have some issues with this second volume. At times, it didn't really feel cohesive. A lot of the plot felt really random, nothing really ever tied together. So yeah, I was a little disappointed with this second volume, but hopefully when I do pick up the next volumes, I won't be as disappointed. But I do definitely think this second volume, even though the first half was a little kind of wonky in terms of the pacing and the narrative, I definitely think the second half of this volume picked up immensely once it introduced its primary villain, known as the Clown. I guess kind of like the Joker in this universe, comparable to DC Comics, I suppose. That's kind of what I was getting. And yeah, definitely some great cliffhangers in this volume in particular. Really great stuff. Definitely can't wait to pick up the next one. So overall, really liked this Hawkeye series. Pleasantly surprised. Just great humor, great artwork. So you guys, have you guys read these Hawkeye comics? What did you think? Just let me know. So that's it for this book review. In the comments below, have you guys read any of the books I discussed in this review? Do you want to read them? Just let me know down below. So that's it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you like this video, you may like these other videos. Bye guys.